Hi, and welcome to a Building Smart podcast. Today I'm joined by Léon van Berlo, who's the Technical Director of Building Smart International. And I've invited him to have a sit down and have a conversation with me about all things technical and all things Building Smart. So with that, I'd like to welcome Léon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Good. So Léon, I've got a few questions for you today, but quite interested in your thoughts generally about the topic of openBIM and Building Smart, and of course the wider picture of our industry, essentially, as I know you've had quite some years and experience in contributing to the topics that we will find ourselves discussing.
Yeah, I was actually hoping they wouldn't be too technical. It's usually just the facilitating parts, right?
Yeah, I mean it's a good word to separate the wheat from the chaff, as we say. So um, ultimately, we're only
I'm
as
not
good
sure I
at.
will end up on the right side. And
No, I've always ended up on the wrong side, but don't worry about it. You'll be fine. Yeah, so I mean, Leon, just tell us a little bit about yourself, a bit about how you got involved in Building Smart, and then probably slightly later on how you came to Building Smart International.
yeah, so yeah, maybe not use up too much time on me then, but I am from I grew up in the construction industry. I have a practical education and eventually ended up as an architectural engineer on the university, but with already quite a strong passion for automation in construction. When I tell the story to different people, I always say that I got interested in automation and BIM because I was pretty lazy, and as soon as I was drawing something in AutoCAD or RT, which was popular in the Netherlands back then, as soon as I had to do it the same a second time, I was interested in how to automate it and make it more efficient. So it kind of naturally was pulled towards BIM and openBIM eventually as well, of course. Um, Ended up at a Innovation Institute, TNO, in the Netherlands, and did a lot of innovative projects, experimental projects on collaborative design, collaborative engineering. Was quite involved in the open source BIM server project as well. Did a lot of BIM and Geo stuff for a while. And at some point, maybe even a natural point after years of innovation, Building Smart International asked me because they wanted to fill a role as technical director. And I guess I was one of the few that was actually stupid enough to take it.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, it was some big shoes to fill, right? Let's be clear about that. The technical strategy for Building Smart had been relatively informal and probably a collection of groups of
Yeah.
good intentions and good investment, but ultimately not under a single strategy or sort of coalesced under a mutual agreement, which I think was one of the things you had to do straight away.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also why I say that I was hoping we're not discussing too many technical things. I really don't see my role as very technical. Obviously, there's a lot of technical components involved, but the main challenge, especially when I joined, I mean, the first task was to create more like an integrated roadmap for the technical direction. And yes, exactly like you say, there was a lot of different groups trying to go in different directions, really with all good intentions. And it was actually not that difficult to write a roadmap where they would all go in the direction they wanted, but still have this integrated overview of how it would all connect. That part wasn't too difficult writing it on paper, but then actually convincing them and having them make it see and actually try to collaborate, have them collaborate with each other. Yeah, that was the hard part, and it definitely took some time. There's
I think one
nothing
of the
technical about it.
well, I mean, I guess you're right in some respects. I don't know what's the most important component of the technical director, either understanding the technical components or being able to bring those thoughts together and bring them into a single sort of concerted effort under the roadmap. But I have to say, and this isn't just saying that, I think it's been a good journey so far, and I think we've got some way to go. But at the same time, the response we've had around demonstrations of the openBIM workflow are a good testament to some of the progress we've made, and it's quite difficult. Sometimes it's quite hard to not stop and sort of look back and say, actually, we have made a lot of progress in areas like the bSDD or validation service and even IFC itself. And at that point, we do acknowledge that. So I did actually want to touch on the openBIM workflow, because one of the reasons to have a discussion with you today was that actually we have published a variety of videos of you showing the openBIM workflow. But before I do that, I just wanted to make sure that if any listeners or anyone watching doesn't understand some of the technical terminology, you could provide us a little overview of some of the acronyms and some of the standards and some of the services in a simplistic format, if possible.
Yeah, yeah, that is a nice reference to the video indeed. Yeah, we're full of acronyms. There's indeed a lot of them. I think most people have heard about IFC, the Industry Foundation Classes. This is almost like the flagship standard of buildingSMART. It's the first one that was created end of the 1990s. And this is basically a set of agreements. How are we going to call a wall? How are we going to call a staircase? What's like the minimum amount of information we want and can exchange from a wall? How are we going to exchange the properties of that entity, including geometry, which is also just one of the components of these semantic exchanges? That's what IFC is. And I think the word foundation inside IFC is also very important. What's inside IFC is really the foundation where everyone globally can agree on. So you won't find very specific, detailed objects that are specific to a region or specific to a certain domain. IFC is trying to be the foundational agreements, the foundational classes of the industry. And that's been a major effort. And I mean, all credits go to the people that have been working on that for years and years. It really took a very long time. And I can imagine also years of quite some loneliness where people really had to convince others about how important this is for interoperability in our industry. But it's a huge effort, and it's been a major achievement that it has been grown into the success that it is now. So IFC is the backbone of the openBIM workflow. How are you going to exchange data in a way that the receiving end understands what it is without human interpretation? And I think that's also touching on the core of what an openBIM workflow is, because you can exchange data easily over email, Excel, whatever you want. There's so many ways to exchange data at this moment. But exchanging it in a way that the receiving end doesn't need human interpretation to process the data. That's the core of openBIM. And the industry foundation classes as the basic foundational agreements on how we are going to call things and what the minimum characteristics are. Yeah, that's the most important part.
So this international language, yeah, I mean, thank you. That's a really good description of it. I mean, this international language is quite well known, but I often wonder why it continues to grow, and it grows in a sort of steady but also sort of cumulative pace of people that become, I'm not going to say believers, but actually supporters, maybe is a better term.
Yeah. I think we are touching on an interesting technical topic then. So there's certainly a growing amount of foundational classes that are being added to the agreement. That for part that is explainable because it has a growing amount of domains that we support. I mean, it started just in a vertical construction or building domain. With the release now of IFC 4.3, it has a massive growth into horizontal spaces as well. Lots of infrastructure parts in there. There's been work being done on tunnels to add that to the agreements as well. But yeah, there is of course then also the technical reasoning that it should be much more modular. And yeah, not everyone can support everything. So yeah, that's indeed also a big part of the technical roadmap, to try to make even the foundation split up between an actual shared foundation and then modules between different domains and application regions.
Yeah, and I think we we're touching on sort of some futuristic things there, but I think today as well, we've been working and talking about other services such as the Building Smart Data Dictionary, Information Delivery Specifications (IDS), and IFC Validation Service. And I wondered if you could just give some short
Yeah,
definitions to what
yeah,
they are as well.
yeah. So because when you exchange information structured as IFC, you still need to define what kind of information you need in a normal workflow. So we've seen that there's a lot of different Excel sheets out there and PDFs again. And at some point, it was very clear that the industry would benefit from also having a clear semantic standards to define requirements. So that's indeed where IDS, the information delivery specification, came in. That really pushes clients, whatever kind of client, also a contractor can be seen as a client for their subcontractors, but really pushes and forces people to define their information requirements also in a very structured way. So IDS is an XML-based standards where people can exchange what they want, what they require, what they request from a party that is authoring IFC data. It's a relatively young standard. I think it's officially, we can't even call it a standard yet. It still needs one final round of voting, but it's become so popular in the industry that we already have a lot of software implementations supporting it. I suspect it will be an official buildingSMART standard soon.
Great, and bSDD.
Yep, that obviously brings us to bSDD, because that's almost the glue that combines IDS and IFC. So where I said that IFC is an agreement on the foundational classes of our industry, there's always more. There's always classification systems per region. There is specific additional standards for MEP domain, for example. There's a lot of different additional agreements on top of IFC that are being made and can be made. Also, these can be published in many different ways, and buildingSMART is facilitating the publication of these standards in the bSDD, our buildingSMART data dictionary, or buildingSMART solution for data dictionaries. This is where we allow all of these additional standards that have different release cycles, different licenses, to be able to link those to each other and publish them and make them available for users. And this is also, if you want to have technical terms in this podcast, the bSDD is also the place where we use the link data strategy to make sure that all of these different standards are related and connected to each other.
Fantastic. And then maybe not finally, but another important component is the validation service, or IFC validation service, as we call it.
Yeah, that's one that is very exciting, especially in the technical domain. It's still in beta phase, but when you have all of these agreements and all of these standards, you still have to be sure that it actually works in practice. So there's still a couple of examples out there. They're a lot less than used to be, but there's still a couple of examples out there where you receive an IFC file and it doesn't open as you expect. So to investigate where the problem then is it in the IFC file that is not fully according to the standard, or is it in a software implementation that is not able to fully support that file? To be able to evaluate that, we have launched the validation service for IFC files. So it's available now in beta on validate.buildingsmart.org. Everyone can upload their IFC file, and it's being evaluated against the standards and the definitions. And if it's valid, you can be 100% sure that it is a valid file that should be able to process correctly.
I mean, I think that's a huge step forward, right? Being able to know whether an IFC file is valid. I mean, let's be clear that that's going to be, I don't like using the term game changer, but in the industry, that is surely a very important part of why we exist and why the industry should be very pleased with the developments there.
Yeah. We're also getting feedback from the industry that it immediately stops the blame game, because there's always pointing to different directions. No, it's your fault, it's your fault. Uploading this to the validation service just immediately shuts down these discussions, and you can move on and actually fix the problem.
We haven't discussed this, but I am wearing a t-shirt that says,
Aha,
uh,
you're actually wearing it.
just by chance, that
Brilliant.
just so happens that I have a
Uh,
t-shirt on, so for anyone listening, that says "Stop the Blame Game, IFC Validation Service." So
uh, this
just by
so now you have to put this podcast on YouTube as well then for people to see it.
all right, consider that done. But yeah, okay. And so I know this isn't the full suite of services, and we're just talking about some of the new things that we've been developing. But I also wanted to touch on the openCDE brand as well, with things like Documents API, because I feel like sometimes they don't get the recognition that they deserve. And I wondered if you could just touch on some of the developments there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've so far we're only talking about data and data agreements, but there's also a lot of gains, procedural gains to make in how you exchange the data. So I can send you data over email or upload it to some kind of a server. But if I have to do that manually every time, there is an efficiency that can be made there. So that's the reason why buildingSMART is also moving into these what we call interface standards. So interface standards are defining kind of how you pass through a certain gateway of a system. So what you are exchanging and the data and the content, that's all defined in IFC and stored in bSDD and all of those kind of things. But to automate the exchange of those files and those data sets, we're moving in this terrain of defining interface standards. And yeah, this is indeed very underappreciated. The application programming interfaces, the APIs, is a big step of buildingSMART to move into. There's obviously, I think many people know that, the BCF API. We should touch on the BCF topic as well. There's a foundational API. There's agreements on how to do authentication to make sure that it is strong and reliable. And one of the modules that has recently indeed been approved as a final buildingSMART standard is the Documents API. So there's a couple of really nice videos out there. So if you're putting this podcast on YouTube, I'm sure we can link some other YouTube videos in there as well that explains the benefits. But Documents API, it really makes it possible to just get a document from a CDE directly into your analysis tool instead of having to manually download it, manually upload it. So just from the 10 steps that you need to get your data from one place to another, you can automate 4 steps of it, and that really makes it more efficient for end users to use these different tools in collaboration with each other.
Okay, so now we've sufficiently confused anyone that was not aware of what buildingSMART does with all these acronyms and everything like that. I do have to say, though, that these are some developments that have really happened over the last couple of years. And I think when we bring it up a level, what it means is that users can better define their exchange requirements by being very clear about what it is that they want to exchange. The quality of the IFC output is improving because we're getting better input from vendors. We will be improving the way you can certify against it, and you can validate that information with the validation service. We can enrich the IFC model with the buildingSMART Data Dictionary, because that is a new service that is being improved, and there are more plugins being made available from some of the major vendors. And of course, then you can automate some of those tasks because we have some interfaces to improve the productivity of those workflows. So this workflow that you talk about is ultimately improving the ability to work with open data and make interoperability between the exchanges and agreements, so that there's less human error, let's say, at that point, and this is an open standard safeguarded for life.
Yeah, and I mean, since confusing people with acronyms seems to be part of my job, I would like to add one more, because I think you're describing the process very neatly. You start with defining your information requirements, producing the data, authoring the data, exchanging it with others in a very efficient way, but then others are actually evaluating it, and they would find issues that they want to talk about, maybe not problems, but at least topics to discuss. So again, there, what we saw was people exchanging emails, talking about the third door from the left on the second floor, which also caused a lot of interoperability issues. So the final acronym we need to discuss is the BIM collaboration format, BCF, which is again a very, very nice and lean way to standardize how you talk about these topics and discuss issues in a BIM data model. So yeah, the BCF standard is about what topic are you, what object in IFC are you talking about? What is the identifier? What is the priority? Who should be responsible for this? You're even exchanging how the camera viewpoint should be pointing to look at the issue as good as possible. So also BCF is a standard that is often underappreciated, but very successful in practice, and even used without IFC because it is so reliable to exchange within a BIM environment.
Yeah, that's a great way of summing it.
I can do more if you want. I have more technical acronyms if you want.
I have this idea that I'm going to throw some questions at you now. So we'll pause it there just for the sake of time. But what I'm going to do, and this is not something that Léon has prepared, so I'm throwing this at him. What I want to do is to put myself in the shoes of stakeholders within our community and ask you a question: is if I am a government agency, why is it important, the things that you've just told me about openBIM workflow? Why is that of interest to me? What do I get out of? What do I benefit?
Yeah, I think as a government agency, there's actually multiple questions here. I mean, as a government agency, you probably want to have a construction industry that can compete on equal grounds, on the same rules, and then asking for openly defined data basically forces the industry to work in a very specific and high quality way. That really levels the playing field for everyone to compete on quality, which is very beneficial for an industry on a macro level. I think for another reason is archiving. If you have government buildings, you probably want to preserve them for a long time. Storing BIM files in a certain structure that you're depending on some kind of commercial entity, it's very unlikely that you can still open them after a couple of years. So storing them in an open data format like IFC it's almost a given for a government organization. And the fact that you're just getting higher quality buildings or the same quality buildings at a higher speed, because this open BIM workflow is actually very, very effective and proven to be very effective. People can collaborate better on a higher quality. We did a couple of business cases that it can save like 2 or 3% on every project for a government on a macro level. That's huge. It's massive gains.
Yeah, and what about if you're an asset owner or a client?
Yeah, same. If you're an asset owner or a client, I mean, getting information about your building is only the first step. You actually want to use that information over the full life cycle of your building as well. If you're getting a file from a certain software tool and you're forced to use that software tool over the course of the lifespan of your building, you don't have any choice. So getting an openly defined data format gives you the choice to define the workflows and optimize your maintenance over the full life cycle of that building.
And IDS is a way for clients and governments to actually define what it is that they want further down the stream. So it's actually putting some more control into the hands of those organizations.
The benefits of IDS, like I said, it's a relatively new standard, but the benefits of IDS also almost stopping the blame game are massive. I mean, we've seen so many examples of governments or facility management or building owners that say they want a BIM model, and then what they get is disappointing them. Because yeah, what do you mean by saying that you want a BIM model? So clearly defining what kind of information you need, how it should be structured, what kind of properties you actually want in there, with the option to refer that to the publication in the bSDD. It leaves no room for interpretation. Building owners get exactly what they need. There's again, no discussion anymore. It's so much more effective.
And what if you're from an architect firm, or you're an engineer, or you're from a construction organization? What are the components of the open BIM workflow benefiting you?
Yeah, I think there's a couple there as well. I mean, the fact that you can choose whatever software tool you want and still participate in any project. You're not being forced by a client or by a contractor to work in a certain software tool that is not effective for your internal workflow. That's massive already. Architectural firms or any kind of engineering firm or contractor can optimize their own internal workflows on the software tool that they prefer and still contribute to any kind of project. That's massive. I mean, the fact that you can hit the ground running on every project instead of having to relearn certain behaviors and workflows every time because every project uses different tools. That's I think very beneficial. That's at least my personal experience as well.
Okay, and last one, I know I've missed some groups here, like education, things like that, but what about software vendors? So what is that open BIM workflow doing for software vendors?
Yeah, it depends a little bit per software vendor. I mean, there's software vendors that have a suite of tools in a portfolio, and it seems to be more and more. They also seem to be optimizing on IFC to even exchange within their own software tools, because IFC is the most proven and the most effective way to do that. But also software tools, the smaller software vendors get more possibilities to be able to be used within different environments. There's a lot of small niche vendors that make software for energy analysis in a certain country. The fact that they can just import an IFC model, do energy analysis, and send the results to a CDE using the Documents API is definitely a sales pitch, I would say.
Great. And I think on that, I promised a relatively short one here. We've already managed to miss that deadline, and I was going to call you LVB then, just to continue with the acronyms. But Leon, I really appreciate your time, and I think what is interesting is that we're getting a lot of positive feedback that the work being done is appreciated by the industry, and I think this is a good way for us to continue momentum. And of course, we've got the summit in Valencia in a couple of months, which will be another great opportunity to share some of this stuff.
Yeah, I think summits are. I mean, a lot has happened in recent years. There's a lot of new standards like Documents API and IDS, but there's also a lot of extensions on IFC. We've got a completely new bSDD. Summits are so awesome at the moment because it really all comes together, and we have hands-on actual demos to show people how it works. Summits have never been so good. So looking forward to see everyone at Valencia and the summit in the fall as well this year.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Leon, and thank you to everyone listening, and even to those watching. Thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to welcoming you on the next podcast.